adapted to and got better with is taking notes.
And you should do it if you ever go to a tournament. Take notes. It helps you concentrating. It helps you thinking. You can rethink the matches you played. Even if you lost, you could think about what could have I done better to just win the game next time. So please, guys, do this. Take notes and learn after your losses and wins.
Yeah, there's something to be said for making sure that you always pick up information in a loss or a win. I speak to a lot of top players, and they've said to me, I lost to him in Swiss on day 1. I played him in Swiss on day 2, and I beat him. And I was like, well, how did you manage that? And he was like, well, I managed to figure it out based on what happened in the loss. And that's, I always find that really, really interesting when players can do that and players can take that adaptation and push on into something bigger and better, essentially. Out of it.
The tension is high, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, both players just trying to get all looped in with each other, making sure they're connected, making sure they're ready to go and nice and comfortable. You don't want to be under any extra pressure in this one. You're already struggling enough, so making sure that you're ready to go. I don't think the Puki that we see Melvin rocking on the table is going to be too important, but
it might be a hint. It might be a little hint. It got one move that helps the certain Pokemon to win some games.
Yeah, I forgot about that. It's be interesting to see. Team preview should be coming up shortly. For those of you at home, I know that tension's really pushing on here. Both players just settling in. There's the handshake, so we must be pretty close to getting ready and starting off here. There's the timer from Christoph. There it is. It's team preview. Sebi, I'm going to let you do it.
There we see it. We see the Gengar, Kyogre, Rayquaza, and Tapu Koko, Incineroar, and Ferrothorn on the one hand. And on the other hand, we see Incineroar, Xerneas, Salamence, Groudon, Tapu Fini, and the certain Shedinja.
Shedinja's the one we were talking about.
Yep.
It's time to go in and check that you have answers for it. In Kimo's case, yes, he does. He actually has a lot of answers for it.
Leech Seed maybe from Ferrothorn is already...
There's so many ways around it. So unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be coming out in this one. You've got plenty of ways around it with that awkward typing on Shedinja, but plenty of ways. And even though you might want to be able to push it out there, I've got a funny feeling it might be time to leave it at home for this one.
Well, if we look at the matchup, again we got Rayquaza and Kyogre facing a Xerneas and a Groudon. Rayquaza and Kyogre are like both struggling. If he really pulls off a Geomancy boost, he got the Incineroar to position that, to use Fake Out, to give Xerneas a free chance to set up that Geomancy. You got Salamence, which is really tough for Rayquaza and Kyogre to beat if you're not want to lock yourself into, if you not want to go for an Ice Beam in the open. And I'm really looking forward where this goes, and we already see the leads. So Kimo is sending out Incineroar and Gengar, and Melvin is bringing Groudon and Salamence to the board.
Yep, and we are going to see the Primal Reversion, Groudon Primal Reverting right there, Desolate Land, instead of the usual Drought ability. That will be a harsh sunlight that's much harder to change or even just quite simply turn off. We'll see how that one goes, but it may be stuck in for a little bit longer. Kimo deciding what to do on this turn. Obviously, both the potential Megas are in play already.
Yep.
And I think there's some pretty interesting options here. The Fake Outs and the potential to then commence with a Shadow Tag. Melvin potentially has one chance to try and switch his board around. He's going to take it right away.
And he does it by switching out Groudon and switching in Shedinja. I'm happy to see that one. So, to clarify, its ability Wonder Guard, it only got 1 HP, and with its ability Wonder Guard, it can only take damage from super effective hits. So basically, you need to hit it with a Dog type, with a Ghost type, and if you don't do, it just doesn't take damage. Then of course, usually they do run the Focus Sash. and Kimo just switches in Kyogre.
Yeah, if you don't hit it super effectively, you do not get to do any damage, and it's frustrating when they've only got 1 health, but you can't even do a pittance of damage here. So an interesting switch and an interesting selection, honestly, by Melvin. The whole board is kind of powering up still. We've gone through 2 Primal Reversions now, 2 Mega Evolutions, and Gengar revealing Hidden Power right off the bat, trying to make that cheeky play with the Hidden Power. Water potentially isn't going to land, isn't going to do any damage to that Shedinja, as Salamence just fires back with a strong Hyper Voice. Good damage on both sides, but Kimo's tactic to try and deal with the Groudon absolutely rumbled there.
Well, you go for it on the first turn. Afterwards, people know about it. But this is probably what Melvin wanted to scout, if there is a Hidden Power Water coming, and he did it right there. And now he knows that 1 move slot from Gengar is already taken. He has to figure out if there's a Shadow Ball that can threaten the Shedinja. And Kimo switching out Kyogre straight away again, bringing back Incineroar and shuffling those Intimidates.
He has to get the Incineroar in. It's so important that he does that. Purely because he needs good answers to this Shedinja. It's been very, very strange seeing people trying to kind of get around that one.
Gengar is just protecting, and Shedinja is already starting to work, going for a Toxic onto Incineroar. And this is where the party starts, because Incineroar is slowly getting less and less health.
The good thing about Incineroar, though, is, you know, the way that Toxic Poison works is it actually ticks up over time.
Yeah.
So it does more and more every single turn. At least with Incineroar, you regularly switch to try and capitalize on those Intimidates. So hopefully you won't be taking those big... It can get up to 50% of your health from Toxic over time. It takes turns, don't get me wrong. And Shedinja showing off one of its most frustrating tricks.
Ally switch. And Kimo just switched in Ferrothorn instead of the Gengar. Gengar switched actually out. And we see a Hyper Voice from Melvin Salamence doing kind of chip damage and a Z move.
Oh yeah, this Z move is going to try and deal as much damage as possible. Really interesting to see him just go for the Malicious Moonsault. Will actually, I don't want to say call it right, I don't know if he was trying to deal big damage to Salamence, because it seems like a little bit overkill to try and deal with the Shedinja. I'm not an expert, but that seems like a little bit much to me. And Shedinja will be put down to its Focus Sash. Incineroar takes some damage from poison.
Well, it took off all HP guard and only left 1 left. Thanks to its
That's got to be the most underwhelming Z move animation of all time. You go for this huge moonsault off the top ropes into the sky, and you don't even impact your opponent's HP bar. That's a letdown if I ever saw one for an Incineroar.
But if we get to it, like we too already focused a bit on Shedinja, and I think this is what why you use that Pokemon, because people focus on it, even your opponent focus on it, how to get away, how to beat it, and forget that the other ones still deal damage. Like this Salamence is going for the Tailwind to speeden it up, but it already did some really good chip damage with its Hyper Voices.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good turn, in that the Incineroar is going to be in still. It's still going to be sat there with the with the poison going down. And that poison may have put it in range to get picked up by a Hyper Voice. It may have also just put it in range to get picked up by a bigger attack. Something like a Double Edge could potentially do it.
And Melvin's game plan is obviously to get rid of those Intimidate Shufflings and, of course, of Kyogre. Groudon might be faster than Kyogre and deal the damage in the back, but they still got Xerneas, which may shine when the Ferrothorn and the Gengar are chipped as much as possible to get the knockout.
Yeah, I think the big thing here as well is saving that Shedinja till the coast is clear, essentially, right? You need to make sure that you're not causing any problems, you're not taking any damage you shouldn't.
Yeah.
And you're not losing a Pokemon, essentially. Now he needs to keep in mind, Kimo has Incineroar in the back. Incineroar can hit Shedinja, but if Shedinja protects and Incineroar's on the field, then guess what? You're just going to get knocked out by the poison. Ferrothorn is going to keep going, try and knock off on Salamence, but it's just not enough.
So clever switching for Xerneas. This is what helps you sometimes. Shedinja is a perfect switch opportunity to bring in that Xerneas. And now we see Gengar Ferrothorn again on the board. It's not looking good for Xerneas, but this is not what he must do.
This is definitely feeling like a 2016 match a little bit with some of these choices. A lot of Gengar, a lot of Ferrothorn. Like, it definitely feels like a different type of era. And Incineroar's coming back in, but at the end of the turn, it's just going to be done for with the poison damage that you just can't shake by switching out.
Just one last Intimidate for that Salamence. And I see where the game plan is going. I think Melvin wants to get rid of everything that is able to hit the Shedinja, and it's working out pretty good so far. That Ferrothorn is just taking damage and damage and damage, and Dazzling Gleam taking it pretty close to a KO, and that Gyro Ball...
Ooh, not even enough. Not even enough. The big thing here, like you say, is just clearing the way for Shedinja. It's a win condition.
Yeah,
and there've been players throughout the years who have been historically great at playing Shedinja.
Yeah.
They've always been able to see win conditions, establish win conditions, and push win conditions. And honestly, you know, Kimo's shown us that Primal Kyogre, if it ends up one-on-one against Shedinja,
even the biggest Pokemon can't take it.
Shedinja just wins. Yeah, I mean, it might take some time if Kimo doesn't concede, but overall, you know, it's certainly an interesting option to see if that win condition can be put into play.
And we still got an interesting board position, like not even the Shedinja is the only win condition, also Xerneas might be a win condition now if it sets up its Geomancy. We're still on the tailwind, so that Xerneas is naturally faster. And let's have a look. Kimo is switching out the Ferrothorn for the Primal Kyogre.
Yeah, come on, look, come on, have a butchers at this. It's going to be the Kyogre coming in nice and early. Probably just wants to be able to take hits a little bit better than some of its other options. Make sure that Rain's set up as well. That Rain is going to certainly help its damage output out. So we'll see if he decides to go for it. It does mean that Salamence just continues these Hyper Voices though. It's not stopped them yet in this game,
and there you go.
Don't wonder.
There you go.
Yeah, that Geomancy's just got to be an end game for him here.
We're in the end game now.
Yes. No spoilers, said it. We've told you.
So Melvin just set up the Geomancy. Kimo was so focused on how to get away with Shedinja that Melvin played everything towards a Geomancy sweep in the end, and there we are.
Yeah, I mean, looks like Kimo knows his goose is cooked in this one. The hover on the forfeit button, never a good sign, never what you want to see from the player on the near-sided 3DS, so probably needs to be a little bit different in game number 2. The biggest concern right now is, do you tunnel vision on Shedinja, and if you do, how do you stop a Geomancy at the same time? You cannot tunnel on both, and you're forced to bring certain Pokemon to deal with Shedinja. You just have to. Otherwise, you will lose the game slowly and painfully.
And this is where the party begins, even at team preview. Like, you are really forced to bring something to hit Shedinja. Otherwise, you can forfeit when you see it.
Yeah, I mean, here's the problem, is the way that Gengars are being built recently, Shadow Ball has been a bit on the fringe. It's not been the most popular.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, do you say, okay, I've given up Shadow Ball, I need Incineroar to potentially beat Shedinja, like, once Incineroar goes down, how do you win the game?
Yeah.
Because if there's no attack that can do it for Shedinja on something like Gengar, well, how do you get around it? You know, it's such a slog. But Kimo locking in very quickly seems to know what his answer is going to be to this type of play that he saw from Melvin in round 1.
Well, this Ferrothorn might have Leech Seed, we haven't seen that yet. It also got an interesting ability, so if Shedinja somehow attacks with a contact move into the Ferrothorn, it knocks itself out. But it's a really nice pick for, let's say, the popular team with Xerneas, Groudon, Salamence, Incineroar, and Tapu Fini, and just slap on a Shedinja, which, like, literally brings your opponent headaches.
Yeah, see if you can see if you can find an extra win condition, basically.
Yeah.
You know, in other games, even if it's not a win condition, it can help you set one up by distracting them and forcing them to play like, you must bring your Incineroar now. Okay, that's fine, you can bring Incineroar, but I've got Groudon and Tapu Fini available.
Yeah.
I've got Groudon and Salamence available, or...
And
so
my own Incineroar, you can switch that into Incineroar all day long.
Right.
Yeah, really interesting how Kimo is trying to maneuver around that, and even Melvin could just leave that Shedinja alone now and do not pick it and can predict what Kimo is having to bring in this matchup, and those mind games are like really big.
Yeah, let Kimo make all the adjustments and then, you know, see if you can essentially catch him on those adjustments, right?
Yeah.
See if you can call the adjustments as they come and then still put yourself in one of these winning positions. Because I don't ever feel during game one that Melvin was ever really on the back foot. There was a couple of turns where he could have capitalized more, but at the same time, he always felt to be in good positions.
Yeah. And now we see the first interesting speed stats here. Incineroar is leading next to a Primal Kyogre for Kimo, and Melvin is leading Salamence and Primal Groudon. And interestingly enough, the Primal Kyogre is activating Primordial C first. So this is a really tough spot for Kimo to be in. You know whether, he got the fake out pressure, he could pressure the Salamence, but on the other hand, he could just straight up go for Precipice Blades at him.
Yep. I think you've got to stop the Groudon with fake out, because otherwise Precipice Blades is just going to do too much damage. You know, the big concern is, okay, you need Kyogre out, you don't want to just lose weather control, and if you switch that out, what can come in and take that hit comfortably? Because the list, honestly, of Pokemon that appreciate or can take a Precipice Blades is so low.
Yeah.
Particularly when you exclude flying types or levitators, that list becomes really, really, really short. And that's the kind of advantage that Melvin, if he carves it out in turn number one, will be able to use for the rest of the game.
And I love those matches where you got the sun up and there's still a Rayquaza in the back, which you can always switch in to negate the weather and hit a Primal Groudon with an Orange Impulse, but Melvin straight up switches up the Salamence, preventing its Intimidate, and switching Xerneas instead, and Kimo is switching out Incineroar, preserving the Intimidate, and there you go, Rayquaza comes in.
Yeah, I think that Rayquaza coming in is certainly interesting, because it does mean he's got the airlock himself, which allows him, knowing his Kyogre is quicker, to Water Spout, no problem at all. And that's going to be an easy knockout on the Groudon here. I do really, really like that play, the airlock ability, even though the harsh sunlight from Desolate Lands was still visible on the field. Airlock meant that his partner Kyogre was able to ignore it. So that puts Kimo in a very early turn one lead in this matchup, and I think he's going to be in a position to capitalize off it very well for the next few turns.
Oh yeah, Melvin didn't expect a water spot coming. Maybe he expected an Ice Beam to prevent some tailwind from his side so he doesn't get up too much speed control, but Kimo just really went for it and it paid off. That Xerneas is now in range to maybe an extreme speed. No, not yet, but...
not quite, not quite. I think you need to be a little more around the 30% mark for extreme speed. Obviously, there's so many Intimidates to account for as well. It does get a little bit harder when all of those come into play. But overall, you know, below half, probably pushing a little bit more than that, you'll be in a good position.
Yeah.
As we are going to see Kimo just turning up the heat, trying to grind out that result from losing the first game.
And he's taking out the Xerneas with the Dragon Ascent.
It's a smart play.
Of course it is a smart play. If you get a fast Rayquaza, you always go over that. And we see the tailwind from Salamence. Kyogre is probably going for an Ice Beam. There you go. But Mysterious Winds weaken the attack, so it might stand this one. No, it doesn't.
It's not able to deal with it at all. Salamence just fainting through the Ice Beam of this Kyogre. Kimo really turning on the heat in this one. Game one, he was warming it through, but game two, he's cooking with gas. All he has to do is get past this brave Shedinja. But he's got 4 Pokemon to do it, so I feel pretty good about Kimo's chances. He has currently taken no damage in this game as well.
Yeah, this was really clean and a really nice Rayquaza Kyogre sweep. This is how it usually works. You switch in the Rayquaza and knock out these Groudons, and then Salamence gets knocked out by Ice Beam, and you chip the Xerneas into range so that every other attack just straight up beats it. But Melvin just showing Shadow Sneak. Maybe he wants to know how much damage that Shadow Sneak does to the Rayquaza. It's all about information, and again in this match he again brought the Shedinja, so Kimo knows he has to bring something to beat it, and this might be the turn where Melvin capitalizes on it.
Yeah, the problem
and
is
leaves it at home.
I don't think Shedinja is going to be able to work its way through 4 Pokemon on Kimo's side, especially with the selections he has out right now. That's probably going to mean Wonder Guard is of no value to him, and just going to be able to be there for a little bit of show. Rayquaza will just drag an Ascent. That is going to connect, of course, because of the typing. And that's going to send us into a Game 3 pretty soon. We do see Shedinja's huge health bar
going down that quickly.
I love that the health bar goes red as soon as it's like, oh no, I'm in danger, because you are sub 1 health, yes.
So we know he got Shadow Sneak, so you might switch in the Ferrothorn or an expected Shadow Sneak to take it out pretty quickly.
Yeah, that could be really good. If he Shadow Sneaks and brings in Pokemon with Iron Barbs, that's just going to take it out, and I really, really enjoy that.
So basically, maybe Ferrothorn is a good pick for Kimo. It handles Xerneas really well. If he can handle the Groudon, it handles Shedinja. I bet Shedinja can't touch it, because we saw Toxic, we saw Ally Switch, we saw Shadow Sneak, and if you Shadow Sneak it, you're going down. So this might be some route to go for Kimo.
Yeah, I think Ferrothorn could be a good ender for him. It also stands up well against the Xerneas. It stands up well against some of the other Pokemon on Melvin's team. Obviously, it's not so hot against all of them, but you can't win them all. And that, I think, would be a welcome addition, even though we didn't need to see it in the last game.
Tapu Fini might be a good pick for Melvin, just to face the Rayquaza and to face the Groudon. You don't have to take out the Groudon the Kyogre by yourself. You can slowly slow it down, do some tricks with Nature Madness, and then finish it off with a Precipice Blades from Groudon, for example, or a Moonblast from Xerneas. And this is really interesting, like how big of an impact one Pokemon can do to a team.
Let's see if Kimo tries one of his turn 1 big plays. Both games, he's made a move on game 1. And not content with just kind of feeling out the game. Some players like to do that. They like to take their time and see where things are going. Not Kimo. Kimo just goes right in, hits the go button as soon as those Pokemon appear on the field, and just starts to try and find a way to take knockouts, because, by definition,
that's how you win?
Yeah, you win the game. There are obviously a few win conditions. Please don't think that we're only endorsing one. It doesn't really matter how you win, as long as you get those W's.
Yeah, then it seems fitting for Kimo. Like Rayquaza plus Kyogre is a really aggressive team, especially if you pair it with Gengar and Tapu Koko. And there we see the leads. Kimo is sending out Incineroar and Kyogre, and Melvin is sending out Xerneas, Salamence.
Yeah, I like this change-up from Melvin. I think not showing the Groudon early is probably good. It means that, if Kimo switches out, he has to find that position for essentially the switch in and then the knockout. He has to find that a little bit later, and I'm interested to see how he kind of works around that. See where he goes from there.
Well, this is not too bad for Melvin. He can bring himself in a really good position early on, because Kimo can only fake out one Pokemon, and either Salamence is trying to set up Tailwind, and he can bring then Groudon in if it goes down to an Ice Beam, or Xerneas can set up a Geomancy. So Incineroar wants to fake out both, obviously, but no. That's why I'm casting and not playing. Melvin is switching out the Salamence and sending an Incineroar.
Unfortunately, you need both hands to fake out in the animation, Sebi, so you can't fake out both of your Pokemon, just one at a time. Certainly an interesting choice. We are going to get the Intimidate working around as a switch out on Melvin's side. Also means a switch out on Kimo's side. Like I say, saving that Kyogre for a little bit later. Trying to get the sweep with it, I'd argue.
And now Melvin brings himself in a good position to be able to fake out and to set up Geomancy himself. Kimo might have seen this coming by switching in Ferrothorn. He brings an answer to the Xerneas, but is still threatened by Incineroar. So this Kyogre wants to be next to the Ferrothorn to not be taken out by the Incineroar. So good plays from both sides of the field. Melvin might again try to hide his game plan. There might be a Groudon in the back or a Shedinja, and both like really demand Kimo to play in one direction, and Melvin straight up goes for the Moonblast into Incineroar.
Yeah, I think that's interesting to see that one come out. He's going to keep it going with the U-turn as well, so more Intimidates later to come. But U-turn's going to be key in control of that weather, and we'll see if he just brings in the Groudon, reveals that fourth Pokemon. He isn't going to do it. He's going to ignore the advice and just go with the Salamence. But that Salamence is in a pretty solid position to just start hyper-voicing every turn.
Yeah, that Salamence can be crucial in the end, and we see a slower U-turn from Kimo into Salamence, and this allows him to bring his own Pokemon in later on, and the Ferrothorn is already sitting there really good. Still able to shuffle those Intimidates, as is Melvin. So this is all. Let's have a look what the game plans are. Like the Xerneas is probably a really good win condition if you can get Ferrothorn into KO range for Moonblast or a boosted Moonblast. If there's a Groudon in the back, this shouldn't be that hard, but let's see. We see a Gyro Ball from Ferrothorn into Xerneas, doing a really good amount of damage, and that Xerneas is now in a range where it doesn't want to boost anymore, because otherwise it gets KO'd.
Yeah, it's too low. It's too low to keep fighting like this. And now its best option is to try and put back as much damage as it can before it gets finally knocked out.
So Melvin doesn't want to go with the Geomancy Xerneas sweep, so he decided some other game plan. So it might be a Groudon sweep in the end. It might be Shedinja, but
only one Pokemon remaining.
Yeah.
Keeping it close to his chest, but so is Kimo. Not revealing that fourth and final Pokemon yet. The one thing he is also doing, though, taking a whole lot of time over this move, making sure it's the optimal move for him at the time. It is Incineroar in place of that Ferrothorn. Curious to see why he feels that Incineroar is the play right now. Maybe just a board positioning thing with him knowing his Kyogre has the potential to go down, but not anymore, as Salamence, I think, protecting means Kyogre's safe for another turn at least.
And the Ice Beam goes into protecting Xerneas, straight up goes for another Moonblast into the Kyogre. And we got a special attack drop as well, so that Xerneas might just be preparing to bring everything in KO range for either Groudon or Shedinja.
Yeah, that's not helpful. When your Kyogre loses special attack, that's really not good. But the big thing with it, you need it to hit huge water spouts. It's already lost health, so let's just rule that one out. And even then, your Origin Pulses, your Scalds, they're not coming off at full power.
Yeah.
It's not quite what you're looking for.
Now I'm really curious what Kimo got in the bag. Is it the Rayquaza to switch it in? And speaking about switches, Melvin switches out Salamence in favor of Incineroar, not showing the last Pokemon yet. So he got his game plan ready, but Kimo can't. Kimo can't have a game plan ready yet.
Yeah, Kimo's kind of got to keep working a little bit in this one. There's so much switching in this game. Both players trying to find that perfect position to basically win the game from there on out, get settled in, and just win it. Really interesting to see.
And Xerneas again, straight up Moonblast into the Incineroar, finally taking it out. This might be the first Pokemon to take out before Shedinja can enter.
Yeah, you've got to clear the way. I'd say next, get rid of Ferrothorn so you can at least attack.
Yeah.
And then I guess if, depending on what Kimo's last one is, you may have to get rid of that as well. But if it's not Rayquaza, then it could be in a good position to actually try and win this game, I think. If it is Rayquaza, which looking down is rather likely to do, you tend to bring both Restricteds. then it obviously gets different with Dragon Ascent.
Yeah.
But right now,
so we're gonna find out now. There it is.
Yeah.
The Rayquaza coming in, and now Kyogre is free to do Origin Pulse, Water Spouts, Gold. Let's have a look for what he decides. And Incineroar goes for the Fake Out, safe move. He knew if Rayquaza is coming in, it's on the other slot, so he can fire off a 3 Moonblast into Kyogre and taking Kyogre out with a critical hit.
yeah, Kyogre was probably needed there to deal with the Primal Groudon, if that's what Melvin has bought. That critical hit means it's just gone from bad to worse there. You know, he was already down a stage of special defense, but now he's just down a Pokemon. And honestly, I see Melvin entirely in the driving seat right now. This Rayquaza just isn't going to be able to deal with everything here. This Ferrothorn's just going to buy so much time for Kimo.
Yeah, he can just start cycling those Intimidates to lower down Rayquaza's attacks there. Take out Rayquaza and then one Flare Blitz into Ferrothorn, and well, that Moonblast critical hit might be a little bit lucky, but the more you attack, the better are your chances to get one.
Yep, you've always got the chance, so's your opponent. It's totally, just one of those mechanics you have to deal with. But that does put Melvin in such a strong position.
And we do see a Dragon Ascent from Kimo's Rayquaza.
Okay, I like this.
Yeah.
I think this is a good way to strengthen up in the game. Deal with the Xerneas.
And taking it out.
That's that gone. So there's one.
Let's have a look what the Incineroar is going for, and it's straight up by Flare Blades into Ferrothorn.
I really hope Melvin's last one isn't the Shedinja, because this is the worst pairing it could be against. I think it's probably against the Groudon though. So the big thing here though is, Groudon Rayquaza. Yeah, it's not really the easiest matchup, but it's one that you really need to make sure you're going to win. You can't Precipice Blades, you can't really Fire Punch it either.
Yeah.
He is going to show off the Salamence before anything. Kimo just trying to drag it out for us.
If he wants to play it safe, he just switches out Incineroar to get it back in later on with the Fake Out. Salamence can just protect, and maybe he wants to hide what he brought, but I just go for the safe route.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to just seal up this game as safely as possible. Salamence just starting to deal damage now. Hyper Voice to start. Oh, so much damage.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the first Dragon Ascent as well, meaning that special defense is lowered. Here's the problem though. You have to keep Dragon Ascenting to keep your damage output up.
Yeah.
But you also have to keep lowering your special defense and defense. So lowering both defenses is always tough. And I don't know if this Rayquaza is going to be able to cling on for many more turns.
Well, we do see actually the last Pokemon from Melvin, and I'm really curious what he brought. It was the Groudon.
Yay! Shedinja stayed at home and it still was on the winning side. That's what we like to see.
Yeah.
Low contributions, but you still get the winner's medal.
Yeah.
It's like one of those players who leaves the club in the middle of the season, but they still get the winner's medal for the Champions League because they played like 3 of them. It's always funny, but fair play to Melvin. He hasn't relied on it, and he's actually just played a very, I guess to some people, pure game in that he's played exactly the kind of things people want to see, and he's done really well with them as well.
It worked out, and the match was forfeited. Melvin taking the round 5 win here at the European International Championships in Berlin, Europe.
Yeah, that's putting him at a top-tier record, and another player looking to return to the upper echelons of play, looking to be in that top 8, looking to push it into a top 4. Really all of those key things that he wants to be doing. And they're executed fantastically here. They really, really are. They're, players playing at the top of their ability, just making sure they show off every asset of their team when they need to and get wins with it.
I really like how both players built their teams. Like, both players had some certain Pokemon on it, which are straight up win conditions and force your opponent to bring something. Like, both defensively, they don't do that much damage offensively. Ferrothorn is one of those Pokemon where you want to bring a fire type move or a strong fighting move, or like a really strong Dragon Ascent just to take it out, and it gets health back with either berries or leech seed. and leftovers, and this is one where you have to pick against. On the other hand, Melvin brought the Shedinja, which is like a really interesting pick. Have we ever seen a Shedinja winning an event yet?
Winning a whole event?
Yeah.
Oh, anything above I'm trying to think. I know people have bought it at local events. I know that people have played it. I don't think it's ever won anything above like that Premier Challenge kind of mid-season showdown level. I am gonna look at that. I'm gonna dig that up. And see
in the meantime, you can tweet it at us.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be people with lists and lists of teams and fantastic executions of it. But this year, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I will do the research on that for you, Sebi. I'll get to that.
I'm gonna build a team in the meantime.